Okay, today we're talking about how to connect with influential people in your industry. My guest today is Josh Levine. I'll tell you more about him in a second, so stay tuned.
Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we feature top entrepreneurs, business leaders, and thought leaders and ask them how they built key relationships to get where they are today. Now, let's get started with the show.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here. I'm the host of this show, and every week we feature smart CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs from all kinds of companies. And if you check out the archives, we've got Netflix and Grubhub, Redfin, Gusto, Kinko's, YPO, EO, Activation Blizzard. Lots of great episodes, so check out those archives. And before we get into it, this episode is brought to you by our company, Rise 25, where we help businesses to give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships by creating B2B podcasts, helping them to run the podcast and content marketing. And we do three things: strategy, accountability, and full execution through our platform, Podcast Copilot. So if you want to learn more, go to our website, rise25.com, or you can email us at support@rise25.com. All right. I'm super excited about today's guest because he and I have interesting parallels in our backgrounds. Both started our careers in government and then migrated over to the worlds of business and entrepreneurship. And so we have a lot in common in that sense. He is the co-founder and managing partner of Color More Lines, which is a boutique performance-based e-commerce agency that gives brands a white glove experience on Amazon and Walmart. And he has had a number of different stops along the way, including Microsoft. And he's got a story around Google, and we've got stories around Disney and all these sorts of things. But let's start with Josh. I love to get to know what my guests are like, what they were like as a kid. And you got the story about you go to sell baseball cards at a convention, which I was a baseball card collector, where I think we're about the same age. Mm-hmm. And I went to some of those conventions, and you figured out some kind of roulette game that got you kicked out of a baseball card convention, which is insane. You're like 13 years old, and they're kicking you out of a baseball card convention. So clearly you're some hooligan. But tell us the story.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, it was a funny story. We were just kids. It was me and my brother. I was probably 12 years old, 13 years old. My brother's a couple years younger. And we were getting into baseball cards. I mean, this was the 80s. It was cool. It was fun, right? Open up boxes and packs and finding the good cards and all that. And then we ended up with like all these cards that were worthless, like less than penny cards. So we just put up this little bulletin board, and we had a couple dice, and you roll the two dice, and if you get snake eyes, you get a great card. And if you get two box cars, you get, the best card and whatever. But everything else in between was kind of junk cards. And it was just a way to attract people to come to the booth. But we didn't know it was going to be so popular. And there's this kind of line out the convention there for people wanting to roll the little game. And then I don't know, I guess all the other vendors got pissed. And some old guys just kind of like ripped the kids out and told us, "You can't do that. Get out of here." It's kind of funny.
Well, I'll have to say that still really works at conventions, because I was just last week at the HubSpot Inbound conference in San Francisco, and there were a couple of booths that had figured this out. There was one that had like a craps table. Yeah. You didn't pay to play it. It was just like a little gimmicky thing. And then another one that had some kind of game where you had a metal thing that you had to, and these lines were, you would think that they were giving away free cake or something. Like people were lining up to engage in these games.
Yeah, and it was like $1 to roll or whatever. And then, the two good cards on the board, the Ken Griffey Jr. and the Wade Boggs or whatever it was, whatever, $20, $30, $40 card. And it was fun.
That's cool. All right, so let's jump forward. You and I have this interesting shared background where we were both interns in the Clinton White House. You did it in the press office in actually 92, so shortly after the change in administrations. I'm super curious to know what that experience was like. You were working with Dee Dee Myers, who was press secretary at the time.
Yeah, it was incredible. I mean, Dee Dee's incredible. First woman press secretary of the United States. I was a kid at the time, finishing up my junior year in college, and I had this incredible opportunity through the UC-DC program, University of California, and
which I did as well. Yeah, same program. Yeah,
exactly. And so, I'm studying abroad my junior year in England and not thinking about anything. All of a sudden, I get this letter that I was so surprised they chose me, right? And then, wow, it was on White House letterhead. You've been accepted. Show this paper at the gate. You know the game, right? And then go on in. And it was 92. It was the first year of office, so it was an incredible time. I started working in the old executive office building and working in press, and ended up working directly with Dee Dee, which was incredible. And it was the whole crew was there. There was James Carville and Par Bagala were just getting started, and Janet Reno was large and in charge and amazing there, and got to meet cast of characters. I mean, I think the thing that was most interesting for me was seeing the swearing in of Ruth Bader Ginsburg in the Rose Garden. That was,
Mm.
I know, I'll never forget that.
Yeah. What was it like being in those hallways? Because just walking in the hallways of the West Wing and passing governors and senators and the President of the United States and Secret Service and all that, what was that experience like for you?
It was just awe-inspiring. I was a kid, I was wide-eyed. I was like, I cannot believe. It was like a little bit of imposter syndrome. Like, I can't believe I'm here, right?
Yeah.
And like, I know you asked for some stuff, so like this is a little prop. I don't know if you can see this, probably not, right? Can you
Blurring a
see
little
this or
bit. Yeah.
no?
Okay.
No? Maybe not.
It's
But
blurring
anyway,
a
like I
little
had this
bit.
old picture of like, it's crazy. President of the United States, Vice President of the United States, General Shalikashvili, Joint Chiefs of Staff, and Secretary of Defense. Crazy. Like we're just sitting in the Rose Garden watching these people talk,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it's like, anyway, it was wild.
Yeah, it's a crazy experience going through that. And when people ask me about it, I usually say that there were times when it's just like almost mundane. You're just doing your job, doing whatever it
Right,
is. Like the press office, maybe you were doing the clips, which is these days,
right.
I'm sure it's done digitally, but back then, you had to like cut out articles and put it on a photocopier. The photocopier
Yeah.
would always break,
I have that actually in my closet. If you want, like, I have all those clips. Like, we were
Yeah.
doing all that craziness, right?
Yep.
And like, the other thing is, is naive, right? And the reason why I went there originally was I always wanted to help people, and I thought like this would be an incredible opportunity, and maybe in, politics you could help, a whole population move maybe this far. And I did psychology undergrad with the idea that clinical psych, maybe you could help one person maybe move this far. And I was kind of toying with that idea as kind of just getting out of college. And I was also a little jaded when I got there. I don't think, regardless of your political affiliation, it doesn't matter who's in office. It's like the wheels of political change don't move as fast as you think they do, right? I just
Yeah.
remember sitting there in the press briefing room, and I remembered, I won't mention this person's name. I remember they were positive on some policy, doesn't matter what it was, but they wanted to give a cake to the president on his birthday. I was supposed to take that cake and give it to Dee Dee and the whole thing and whatever. And she's like, look, you can't give it directly to the president, right? Because the president of the United States, he honestly doesn't have the right time to take this. And
Yeah.
I saw them literally change their policy opinion on something they were for and now against. And these are the quote, guardians of our democracy, right?
Hmm.
So it's fascinating to kind of see all that up front and realizing that, you know what? I think if you really want to make true change, in my opinion, I just went into business because I watched kind of, my time later, at Microsoft, we can chat about all this. I really saw the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation literally eradicate polio in India by writing a check, right? Not dealing with policy and all that. And I got quite excited about, okay, if you want to make real change, like, go do something that's amazing and use that money to help people.
Yeah. Um, you end up a couple years later at Disney, working at Disney. What was that experience? First of all, how you end up going from the White House to Disney? Was there,
Well,
I'm
there's
sure there's a few
actually,
years in between, but
yeah, there's few years in between in business doing a bunch of things, but then I went back and got my MBA, and that was at the Paul Mirage School of Business at UC Irvine. And they had an amazing technology program, which was an amazing experience there. And it's right close to Disney and Disneyland. So there was a great program there, and I got into the program, and it was an intern program. And at the time, they were building Disney California Adventure, which was a brand new theme park in the year 2000, right next to Disneyland. And it was an amazing experience. I mean, we were in business planning, figuring out what attractions go in the park. It was kind of half MBAs, half engineers. And if you get tired or stressed out, you just walked out and rode Space Mountain. So what could be bad?
and you actually got stuck on one of the new rides?
Yeah, yeah. They asked us, we were doing some, at the time, DCA was like, Disney California Adventure was like, all dirt. And we were doing ride testing on like, I think it was called the Sun Wheel or something, which was just kind of like Ferris wheel thing that had these little pods in between. And you're
Uh-huh.
kind of spinning in the pod and then on the bigger
Oh
pod.
yeah, it's
And
still
like,
there. Yeah.
it's still there. But I
Yeah. That
remember
was
we
the
were
one
getting,
ride my kids got sick on. They're like they couldn't handle it. The
yeah, but
rocking back
imagine
and
if
forth.
you imagine you're doing ride testing, you can't get off the damn ride, right? So
Oh
it's like,
jeez.
like stuck in this pod. Of course, it's summer and it's a million degrees out there. And we're like, get me out of here.
That's a great story. That's a great story. So that's cool. So you experienced Disney, and from Disney to Microsoft. That's an interesting transition too. How did
Yeah,
that
so
happen?
I finished business school and I really went, they had a really strong technology MBA. I really wanted to go get into that. And I got recruited by Microsoft at the time and honestly just made me an offer I couldn't refuse and, moved my life to Seattle.
And what was working at Microsoft in that stage of time like?
I mean, it was incredible. I'm a really big fan of that podcast, Acquired. You know that
Yep.
one, right? And it was
Yeah.
funny listening to their stories on Microsoft. It's like two parts, but it was
Yeah.
fascinating. And being there, frankly, in the part one, I was like, oh man, I remember that, remember that. But I got recruited into the Windows group and worked on the Windows XP launch team, doing
Hmm.
partnerships for Microsoft, and it was the most amazing experience. I don't think ever will I have that opportunity to be on a product team and launch at that type of scale globally, that those size budgets, those amount of people was I learned so much.
Good thing it wasn't Windows Vista because I still have bitterness towards that.
There you go. Hey, listen, I take no responsibility for that, but I will
Yeah.
say, Windows XP was incredible. It's the first time that Microsoft sim shipped a product in 150 countries, 50 languages. Let's go, right?
Yeah.
And huge partnerships. Yeah, and I actually was doing partnerships in the Windows group.
Tell us about the first deal between Google and Microsoft.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. So I was working on a deal. I mean, at the time, this is, circa 2001, maybe 2002, I forget. But Microsoft was trying to figure themselves out, and with due respect, they hadn't figured out the search thing, right? And these were the Linux compete days where things were growing pretty hard, and Windows developers were having some difficult times finding content on MSDN and TechNet, which were the main networks for developers to actually code and build a healthy Windows ecosystem, right? So this is, 20 plus years ago now. So everything's in the public domain. Microsoft figured it all out. But one of the things to kind of jumpstart that was there was a little company nobody heard of in Mountain View. It's called Google, right? They were about
Hmm.
150 people and, they were just another usual suspect. You remember those days? There was Alta Vista, there was Akamai, there was Blue Mountain, there was Ask Jeeves, right?
Hmm.
And but
Dogpile.
Google, yeah, exactly. But at the time, Google looked like they had something special. No one knew it would turn into the company it is today, right?
Yeah.
But I did the first deal between Microsoft and Google, and we had Google come in and do a vertical search on Google, which was Google.com, I think at the time Windows or Microsoft, I forget, and it gave the ability for Windows developers to find the content they needed to develop on the Windows platform ahead of Microsoft kind of upscaling MSDN and TechNet search and all that. And as part of that deal, we did the first ad contract between Google and Microsoft for Google AdWords. They acquired, I think it was AdMob at the time, which turned into Google AdWords. And it was an amazing time. I learned an incredible amount and got to know, the Google old guard there pretty well.
And you got offered a job from
Well, I
Google?
was
Is
going for
this-
a job there. My joke, funny enough, was I was going for a job there, and then, moron here, I like to say, meaning me, decided, you know what? I'm good. I'm at Microsoft. This is an amazing experience. Life is great. Why would I go to this little startup of 150, 160 people, right?
Right,
That,
right.
that was kind of the joke now looking back on that. But
I mean, Microsoft at the time in the 90s was
well,
the
this was the year
end all be all.
2000, 2001. But yeah, Microsoft was
But
where it was
after the
at.
previous 10 years, it had been the biggest tech company on the planet.
Why would you leave for a
Yeah.
little startup? I mean, I
Yeah.
have half of it here. Here's my Google Lava lamp. So this is whatever that would have been worth. It says Google on it, but I got this cool thing for doing the partnership, and then obviously I didn't get what my friends got that started at Google a couple years pre-IPO. But that's just a funny story now.
You ever done the math on what your shares would be worth? Or do you not do that?
If I would have started then, yes, because I know somebody who went to go work there at the exact time I was looking. But I just keep that between me and my therapist.
Um, Tell us about 2012. You're working for a startup that you had this incident where you almost died, and there's kind of a lesson behind it around overworking yourself to the point of exhaustion. Tell us the story.
Yeah, I don't know. It's probably somewhere in that time frame, but long story short, yeah, it was rough, and it was a good lesson for me and a good wake up call. Um, we're working on a deal, running business development for a software company, and let's just say things were not advertised in terms of what the company was actually selling to investors, and that was unbeknownst to me and unbeknownst to the group of executives working in that company. And although there was no fault of my own in terms of the way fundraising was happening, people invested in that company that thought they were getting an apple and they ended up getting an orange, right? Just very different than they thought. And, again, had nothing to do with me. I mean, I'm assuming the financials I'm getting and the deck I'm getting is legitimate, up to date, and frankly accurate. And, things are being done the right way and things were not being done the right way, frankly. And I internalized it. And rather than just realizing that, you know what? And I learned this obviously many years later, right? The idea that control the controllables, like what is in your control and out of your control, and how do you let go of stuff that doesn't serve you, that's out of your control. But at the time, I hadn't learned that lesson, frankly. So I internalized. I learned a really hard lesson between mind body, and yeah, I cut myself and ended up getting which is no big deal. We cut ourselves all the time in life, but I ended up getting a really nasty staph infection, which
What's the connection between the two? Like,
well, when I
are you,
talk to the infectious disease doctors at UCLA, the mind-body connection is absolutely there. When you are so stressed out and you run your immune system so low because you haven't processed what's going on in your life, then you're just, there's no defense systems. There's no T cells. There's nothing to get out there and defend. So I didn't realize this, but the number one reason people go to hospitals is staph infection, actually. It's very
yeah.
common, right?
Hmm.
But normally you get a cut. You put a little betadine on it, you're good, or a little Neosporin, no big deal. But like if you break, I didn't know this, but staphylococcus is living in the inside of your nostrils. It's on the outside of your arm. It's on the outside of your neck right there. But like when you get a cut, like, your body fights it off, and 98% of the time there's no issue. But if you have nothing inside because you completely stressed yourself out, guess what? Like it caused me to be in and out of the hospital 3 times, multiple surgeries. It was
Wow.
like this horror movie and it wouldn't die. And then I was on a work trip to New York and then took my shirt off and saw another red spot and it was expanding. And then I had an emergency flight back to UCLA, surgeries, vancomycin, drugs of last resort, IV
Hmm.
antibiotics. It was crazy. And this
Wow.
happened multiple times over a year period. It was crazy. Yeah.
And
And
what was the solution?
I mean, partly it was just a lot of crazy antibiotics and a little bit of luck with some experimental drug that really helped and saved me. I mean, it was in one of those double chamber rooms, where you're totally isolated and people walk
Hmm.
in, they look like they're on planet Mars, right? And
Hmm.
you get all these doctors following, going like, "What's with this freak? What's his problem? Why
Hmm.
can't we solve this?" Right? And
Hmm.
it was super, super scary. Then I told myself if I get out of that, then things are going to change quickly, and I'm proud of
So what
myself that like what you say?
what sorts of changes did you make after that?
Well, what I was saying about realizing, what's your hill to die on and what's not, and what's in your control and what's not, and learning to separate that and to only control really the controllables, the thing that you can control. I can only control my own integrity, what I do, how I run. If somebody's doing something that's not right, and sure, it affects everybody around you, but knowing, yeah, what's in your control and not, and leaving the rest, because if you don't, the danger is that you can internalize that, right? And stress yourself out to the point that your body just absorbs all that and then you break down.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, you've worked a number of different places, but Color More Lines is your company now. You also have Growth Avenue, which is your strategic advisory boutique consultancy. Also, Color More Lines is a boutique e-commerce consulting firm. How did you get into that area? We've got politics, we've
Yeah,
got Disney,
yeah.
we've got Microsoft and Google.
Yeah, yeah. So it's an interesting journey. So I kind of left Microsoft, got kind of the entrepreneurial bug, and decided I wanted to go, be an entrepreneur. And the first one was an amazing run. We it was a couple guys from Corp Strat, and we started this mobile social network. And later down the road, Tinder stole the idea, but the swipe left, swipe right, like somebody, not like somebody, all this. But remember, this is like 2006 back in the day when there was no smartphone. There was Motorola
Mm.
clamshell razors, and we were coding on WAP, and it was an amazing experience. We took money from Sand Hill Road and venture money in Seattle as well, and we learned a real hard lesson around preferred share class in the financial collapse of
Mm.
2007 and 8. And when a VC or fund goes belly up and fingers start pointing, right? And then your debt holder, Silicon Valley Bank, says, you know what? We're the debt holder. Let me show you what a lien looks like. And
Mm.
slapped a lien on the business, forced to sell the company. We learned some really hard lessons there.
Mm.
But it spun me off into a series of startups. And, you learn from everything, right? I feel like in life, I've always learned from my mistakes more than my successes. I mean, what do you learn from a success, right?
Yeah.
And so that I've never taken venture money after that again, frankly. And always been, common shares, everybody's equal. And not to say there's anything wrong with venture money. I advise a lot of companies now on taking venture money, but understanding what that looks like and the T's and C's to make sure that, at the time we did the best we could. We were a babe in the woods, but also to give us credit, it was also the worst financial collapse in 50 years. Lehman Brothers went belly up and the
Yeah.
world was crazy, right? So there
Lots
was
of
some
companies.
weird
Yeah.
stuff that had nothing to do with us. But to answer your question, several startups later, I was at a startup in Santa Monica called Service Mesh. I was VP of Business Development Partnerships, and we're about 200 people or so, something like that. And we were acquired by Computer Science Company, which was an 80,000 person body shop at the time in Virginia, trying to figure out what they wanted to be and stay relevant in the cloud space. And we had a software solution that was doing brokering between AWS and Azure. So you could literally port workloads from, the application layer all the way down the entire OSI stack down to the environmental layer, right? And because otherwise, the switching costs are so high between AWS, Azure, Oracle, all this. But to be able to literally copy paste a workload and not have switching costs and be able to negotiate with these massive IT companies, software companies, was great. And we were a darling software product. And then Computer Science Company merged. Meg Whitman sold off Hewlett Packard Enterprise, which is a 100,000 person services organization. It was a 180,000 person company at the time. It's crazy. And I had an opportunity to run the AWS practice for that company. I learned a ton. I got to meet the whole Amazon team at the time, Andy Jassy's whole team on down. It was an amazing experience. And Amazon at the time and AWS, which as you know is the moneymaker at Amazon.
It is now.
Okay.
Was it then?
Absolutely. It was the
Mm.
moneymaker. I mean, the
Mm.
retail business that you and I buy our socks on or whatever we buy, our toilet papers, whatever, if you look at their filings, right? Relative to what AWS spits off, right? It's only gotten better for them. But so yeah, we were like, top partner for them. It was amazing. They had thousands and thousands of partners. We were doing integrations across different industries and all that, and using this proprietary software. Anyway, great experience. And then, when I was vested and done at the time, I left and co-founded on the commercial side of things, an Amazon agency. And that was like, 8 years into that. It was an amazing experience. And we kind of learned a lot of things to do differently than a lot of agencies do today. And the company's had an incredible run.
We teased this at the beginning, talking about connecting with influential people. Andy Jassy is the not as publicly known Jeff Bezos now, CEO of
Yeah.
Amazon. Any lessons to be learned from being around him during that period of time, or any interactions with Bezos or anything like that?
No, not with Bezos. We did have some meetings with Andy, mainly with Mike Clavo, who's incredible, and the entire sales team that was over there. Um, I mean, we met some incredible people. I had nothing but great things to say about everybody that I've met there. But the question just around, it was a question just around influence and
Yeah,
yeah,
these are incredibly successful, incredibly busy,
yeah,
influential people across different industries. And just, a lot of people struggle with that idea of how you connect with someone like that.
yeah. And I think it's a great question. And I think look, you meet them where they are, in my experience. And we work with people up and down the organization at Amazon, and the culture is very tight. They have the 6 page narrative, and it's very different than PowerPoint and what I was used to at Microsoft and other things. But I feel like, in my experience, if you meet people where they are in terms of the way they like to do business, and if you can really understand what makes them tick and what's going to make them successful in their own organization, and you can support that. And that's true up and down an organization from the top to the bottom, right? And then really figure out how to make them successful. And there you go, right? And then you're just as advertised. You do what you say you're going to do, and you work within their framework. That's great. We had other partners besides Amazon we were selling the software to, but everyone's different, right? And everyone has different ways to work internally. So I feel like immersing yourself in the culture. The other thing I think is really important is breaking bread with people. I know that sounds so basic, but like, in the days of no one wants to talk, let's just text message, let's just use
Right.
WhatsApp. Like, no, it's like you still like when things got rough and tough on deals, getting on a plane, going to Seattle, meeting at a conference, like really understanding the background of who this person is and why they tick, go a long way. Because then when things get rough, you're like, well, you know what? I know John. I know his background. I know his integrity. Like, we'll work through this.
Yeah. So then you start Color More Lines and talk a little bit about the early days. Was it a challenge to shift to, having your own consulting firm?
It was. I mean, I'm one of the co-founders, and it was really challenging because you're starting obviously from a big zero, right? You have no clients, all that, but there were some really good people around the business with great experience on Amazon and great pedigrees and backgrounds and a lot of mutual trust. So we were able to bring over a lot of our network to say, hey, oh, by the way, we're now doing this now. Who do you know, right? And that's kind of how it started. And proud of the fact that we were fully self-funded and built that organically from scratch. And did a lot of work early on branding, positioning, messaging, and figuring out, what's the market need, what's differentiating in the space that we can offer. Because the last thing we want to do is launch another run-of-the-mill, vanilla agency, because there's, as you know, tons of them out there, like,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And what's the origin of the name, Color More Lines?
It's just the idea of like adding more lines of revenue to your income statement. If you look at the logo, like color more lines, like for brands that are not on Amazon today, how do you color more lines, right? How do you add more
Mm,
lines of revenue? And the
mm.
tagline is grow faster, right? The idea that, the value prop for the business is, people are time sharing a team of 50 or so Amazon experts at a fraction of the cost of what it would take them to build out the exact same team with that skill set and grow faster on Amazon.
And talk about your other company. So Growth Avenue looks like, according to LinkedIn, started around the same time, a little bit broader than just e-commerce. So any kind of business, helping them to grow faster. Why have two separate companies at the same time?
No, it's a great question. I mean, the primary company has always been Color More Lines. Growth Avenue for me has just been an advisory service. It keeps me fresh, keeps me in different industries, and I serve on a few different advisory boards across manufacturing, travel, technology, and I've really enjoyed it. Really, just that board works fun to just work with CEOs directly and help them scale smarter, figure out how to get to their exits. Like really, I would say winning those defining moments is fun. And the benefit of that too is it keeps me fresh in different industries. And that eventually all comes back to the Amazon business as well. In fact, we've had a lot of referrals over the last 8 years come in through, frankly, me just getting out there and meeting people, right?
Yeah. And you were recording this near the tail end or coming towards the tail end of 2025. AI has been a big impact on every different industry.
Mhm.
How is that affecting clients that you work with through both of the companies?
Well, I mean, mainly I'll say, let's talk about the Amazon business affecting it quite a bit, right? I mean, you got Amazon, got Rufus, their tool internally on Amazon, and everyone and their mother's using AI to try to collapse time. So I think what it's done for us in the agency side of things is it's not replacing people. We're not looking to fire people, and that's not the goal. But it's really how do you augment people with skills and tools to collapse time and allow them to be more efficient and better at what they do, right? Because Amazon right now is very different in 2025 than it was, 2015, right? 2015, there may be two, three things you need to do on Amazon to be successful. And if you did one or two of those things, you could be reselling, vitamin C from Beijing and make money, frankly, right?
Hmm.
Now it's around you need a highly differentiated product with a unique selling proposition, and there's, 25 things you need to do on Amazon, and you better be doing 23 of the 25 if you're going to stand out and grow and make money. Um, but now I lost the last part of your question.
Just how AI is
Oh,
affecting
yes.
the clients that you're working with at this
Yeah,
point in time. Yeah.
absolutely. Thank you. So bringing that home back to those 23 of the 25 things you need to do, we're using AI in every one of those 23 things across listings, across crisis, across creative, across, all the different avenues of the business to empower our people. Because when there's 23 things to do, you've got to collapse time, and you only do that. You can only triage issues faster and find revenue opportunities to grow faster if you have bots out there and things that are like alerting you of you got to stay ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
It's just moving way too fast. I mean, I'm not an expert on all things Amazon. Anybody says they are, it's just not being straight up. It's way too specialized now. So there's deep supply chain people and advertising people and crisis people and creative people and market intelligence people, and they're all augmented, kind of like Matrix style with
Hmm.
AI to kind of support them, but it definitely doesn't replace them. And I don't see a world where maybe some mundane tasks are automated, but you need your people are paying for the critical thinking skills, so you need the humans for that.
Yeah. I want to ask you a career question, career advice for younger generation. You like I have worked in different industries from, you went back and get a graduate degree, you worked in politics, you worked in the entertainment industry, e-commerce, tech, you name it. What do you think for the younger generation that's graduating now, and how should they approach their career given, some of the disruption, frankly, that's happening?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think partly, I mean, is learning and doing. I've always tried in my entire career to learn wherever I'm at, right? So coming up, partly they need a skill set that they can take to a company and say, you know what, I've learned this deep thing in AI and I'm the best at this, or whatever it is, it's a creative thing or whatever. Get really, 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 really good at that so that people have to have you, right? Because you're the best at what you do on that one thing, right? And I feel like once you do that, get you the foot in the door. I always think that like the career world's kind of like the merry-go-round when you're a kid, it's really hard to get on when that merry-go-round's moving fast, right? But like once you get on and you have a seat on the bus, it's much easier to move from company to company and take skill sets and relationships. And, I found that like, I think that's evergreen, evergreen advice. Like I found over the years, like you do right by people and you do the right thing. Then all of a sudden I work for John and John moves to this company. Guess who's he going to call? He's going to probably call me and the people he trusts. And a lot of my career has been that, kind of moving around with a group of people that are super trusted. And some of that has spanned job titles and job roles, and some of that has spanned different industries.
When you mentioned that, I immediately thought of our mutual friend, Justin Crane, who's in Los
Yes.
Angeles, who we've been friends with for a long time. And he's someone who also is always learning and is also a member of Entrepreneurs Organization, which we both are. And it just made me think of the importance of also surrounding yourself with other people who are on that same kind of learning growth trajectory as well, and how that can really be infectious to be around people like that.
It's absolutely incredible. I can't say better things about Entrepreneurs Organization and the amazing quality people that I've met in there. And it's been great. I mean, the expression too, what is something like, you're the average of the five people you hang around most or whatever it is.
Yep.
But I love the fact that I'm constantly challenged. And yeah, Justin Crane, shout out to him, is
Yep.
amazing. And he has Crane Financial Services, does incredible work. But to work with people in different industries and to share, hey, here are my problems, here are the challenges I'm facing in my business. What are you facing in yours? It's an incredible sounding board.
Yeah. All right. I'll let you go after this last question because I know you are preparing for a big conference where you are speaking. So I super appreciate your time here today. I'm a big fan of gratitude, especially expressing gratitude to those who've helped you in your journey so far. Who would you want to shout out? Who has been there for you, helping you?
Another great question. I mean, top of mind right now, I'm going to give a shout out to Jeff Collins, who's incredible. If you don't know Jeff, he is a visionary in the unscripted TV space here in Los Angeles. He's the creator of Dance Moms, which is probably one of the most successful reality TV shows to date, like, 10 plus seasons on Hulu today. But he's actually coming to speak at Deal Exchange this year, and just super appreciative that he's willing to take the time and to speak to an entrepreneurs. And his kind of hero journey on good, bad, and ugly, and beating yourself up in Hollywood over the last several decades. So shout out to Jeff.
And along the lines of the tease from the beginning of this, how did you get to know Jeff originally?
Just through social circles. I mean, I met him probably over a decade ago, was not referred, but just met him and then just became friends and geeking out along the way, right?
Yeah.
And, sharing just like we do with Justin and all the other people, John, we meet. It's just sharing stories, being authentic, saying what's working for you. And it's amazing how many, and what's not working, how many things that are evergreen, cross industry.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Josh, this has been great. Where can people go to learn more about you and Color More Lines and
Sure.
Growth Avenue as well?
Sure, yeah, they can just go straight to colormorelines.com, or they can reach out to me on LinkedIn. And if there's something we can do to help them, we're happy just to do whatever we can to help businesses grow. On the advisory side, it's just growthavenue.com. Happy to get on a call with anybody if I can help out there as well. And really, yeah, appreciate your time.
Yeah, this was fun. Thanks so much, Josh.
Hey, thanks. See you.
Thanks for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.